What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, it turns out that report saying that Sony was going to be shutting down the PlayStation 3, the PlayStation Portable, and the PlayStation Vita stores was correct, as it was confirmed yesterday by Sony, and we're going to go over all the details here today. Also, Monster Hunter Rise is a game we're expecting to hear some big numbers out of when the Famitsu sales starts released later on this week, but it turns out Capcom didn't want to wait that long as they put out their own press release detailing just how many copies they shipped out to stores. Oh, and Super Mario 3D All-Stars is going away in a couple of days, and it turns out a lot of people are indeed rushing out to grab this game before it goes away for good. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton, and if you're new to the Small Life channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Ratchet and Clank. This is a game that Sony has given away throughout the month of March as their play-at-home initiative, and even if you don't have a console, you can still go on the website with a PlayStation Network ID and account that you set up, and at least add it to your library. That way, if you eventually do find a PS5, you can download it and play through it there. And we can actually see this added benefit here from Insomniac Games, where they say Ratchet & Clank 2016 will be playable in 60 FPS on PS5 after a new update in April. As part of the Play at Home campaign, download the game for free now through March 31st. And I was actually playing through Ratchet & Clank again a week ago, and I did notice it felt sluggish, and yeah, it probably was the 30 FPS mode that we're essentially locked to in that game, and it feels weird because on the PS5, we figure we could at least get 60 out of it, since one of the big pushes this generation that I'm pretty happy to see, by the way, is we're getting a lot of performance modes, or 60 FPS modes, basically, even 120 FPS modes here. So when we occasionally have that PS4 game that we pop into the PS5 and it's 30 frames per second, it does feel a bit off now. I'm really happy to see this though, because I will be playing back through this game in anticipation of the new Ratchet & Clank later this summer, but make sure you download it, just a few more days left. Also, we did have a new patch for Cyberpunk come out. This is patch 1.2, and we can head over here. We're just gonna scroll through all of the different things that have been fixed here as I kind of talk about this one. It's out now on PC and consoles. It'll be coming to Stadia later on this week, but I just kind of want you to just watch all of this stuff scrolling by. Yes, these are all of the things they fixed, and this is apparently the patch that includes something that a lot of people were making fun of, which was the NCPD spawn radius for when the player commits a crime has been increased. So essentially, they're going to have the police spawn farther away from you. If you're playing this game, you probably noticed, as I did, that if you did anything bad in the game that the police would come after you for, they would like spawn right in front of you or even like right behind you. There was no chance for you to get away or maybe try to hide or play it off like you didn't, commit a crime. It was a whole thing there. And wow, I was going through this and it is just, fix after fix after fix. It's pretty clear that this game just wasn't ready to come out. And they tried to act like it was when they were doing the apology video. They said they didn't really see a lot of issues that people were running across. And then they released this patch that is like 40 gigabytes, by the way, on average between all of the different platforms, and this massive like wall of text of all the things they had to go back and fix for the game. Yeah, it probably needed a bit more time in the oven. Oh, and something I think is really cool is when we have a game that is really, really old, but we go back and we find something brand new in it. And that actually happened pretty recently. We can see this tweet here. This from Grampy saying, earlier today, someone discovered a hidden cheat code in Kirby 64. If you plug in a second controller, then hold L and press C up, R, C right, C left, then start, your third file will have 100% completion. They have a video down below that shows kind of all of this taking place. And they actually went over a few requirements you have to have, which includes file 2 must be empty, file 3 must be a 0% save file, and there must be a controller at port 1 and 2. It works on all regions, doesn't work on Wii Virtual Console due to the lack of C button mapping. So yes, if you have Kirby 64, you can go try this out. And it is interesting when these little things get spotted or figured out, because like, I look at this, I have no idea how someone would figure this out. I guess you can look through the code. That's something that people mention, is they'll kind of comb through all of the different code in a game after they dump it, and maybe they can find something hidden, because this is certainly an obscure thing. It makes sense why it would stay hidden for 2 decades, but it also makes you wonder what else could be hidden in some of these older retro games. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Sony closing down multiple legacy stores for PlayStation. That includes the PS3, the Vita, and the PSP. We have those dates that were previously reported. Those appear to also be correct. We can see this from VGC, where they outlined it saying, confirming a report from earlier this month, Sony said it will shut the PS3 and PSP online marketplaces on July 2nd, followed by the Vita store on August 27th. Now, it's very important to note that as long as you have access to, your consoles, you can go through your download list and still download any of the purchases that you have made, or at least have been put on your account as you purchasing and owning them. So that includes anything through PlayStation Plus, as long as, of course, you still have your subscription and it's active. So you don't have to worry about necessarily losing your games when they shut this store down. You'll still be able to access them. You just won't be able to make any new purchases going forward. This also includes any video or media content you may have purchased, I guess movies or TV shows, any of that. And to go a bit further, Sony is also shutting down any way to access this version of the store through the web browser, something they actually did like 2 days ago, and people noticed just ahead of the announcement they made yesterday when they updated kind of their Q&A on their website, confirming that all these stores were going to be taken down in a couple of months. Now, we also have some bullet points here that VGC set up from Sony's own site, going over things you will lose access to, with features like you will no longer be able to purchase PS3, PS Vita, and PSP digital content. That includes video games and video content. You will no longer be able to make in-game purchases through games on PS3, PS Vita, and PSP. That's very important, by the way, because that means like DLC, I guess, attached to certain games won't be purchasable anymore. So unless it's on the disc itself, like there are some games that would come out, I think like Fallout Game of the Year, just as an example off the top of my head, the DLC was on the disc. However, if it was one that came with a voucher, so you would redeem the voucher and then, you get all the DLC, that will not work anymore, because that was just a regular game disc, and then you would have to go and buy any of the DLC. So that is going to be interesting to see which games exactly lose just whole branches of content that was developed for it. And you will no longer be able to redeem PSN wallet fund vouchers like gift cards on PS3, PS Vita, or PSP devices once the PlayStation Store purchase functionality for these devices close. Instead, it will just be added to like your PSN wallet. Essentially, they'll remain part of your PSN account. You just won't be able to go and spend it in the PS3 store or the Vita store or PSP store. So I feel like I talked about this quite a bit when the initial report came out, but a lot of it comes down to the way Jim Ryan currently sees legacy games and content just not being that interested in. And I'm sure they have the numbers. Like they look at it and they say, okay, not a lot of people are using their PS3 right now to buy games. Why are we spending money standing up these servers and keeping these services intact when we can just get rid of them, save a bunch of money, and maybe put it towards other things like, let's face it, third-party exclusivity for games like Final Fantasy 16, or who knows, maybe just more production for their first-party studios and willingness to design and create new IPs. Basically, just allocate that money elsewhere. The one that is a shame is that Vita, because the Vita, I guess, is technically 10 years old, but I mean, you look at the PSP and the PS3, yeah, that was back in the mid-2000s, but to look at the Vita that came out in 2011, 10 years old, that still feels kind of young for a system to have its digital storefront shut down, but like, I doubt that there's many people using the Vita at all to buy digital games. And I'm kind of looking at this now and saying, what's that secondary market going to start looking like? Because I mentioned before, certain games like Misadventures of Tronbon, it was very cheap on the PSN store. So you'd go on there and it'd be like $6, $7. If you go on eBay right now, that game's like $400, sometimes more if it's complete and in mint condition. Yeah, disc only is very expensive, hundreds of dollars. So games like that might actually continue to go up in value because there's no alternative now outside of, emulation and all of this. If you want to, like, I guess, legally buy it, yeah, Sony's taking away that ability. So my advice right now, start looking around at PS3, PSP, or, well, Vita games. Vita games are already spiking in price as it was, but like, definitely look around at PS3 games currently because they're still kind of cheap, and some places like GameStop have it as like a buy two, get one free type deal. And PSP games are certainly going to get harder and harder to find. But like I said, legacy content with the retro bubble now was already going up in price, and I think this is just going to accelerate it further and further. It's a shame to see, but to be honest, with Jim Ryan in charge, kind of expected. Next up, let's talk about Monster Hunter Rise. We had talked about this game's initial release yesterday when a lot of places were selling out of Monster Hunter Rise completely, especially in Japan where there were lines out the door and complete sell-throughs, and even in China where people were just waiting for stores to open to pick the game up. And from what I see online, a lot of people are playing this game right now. So Capcom decided, hey, it's Monday morning, let's drop the press release, and they did here, where they say Capcom today announced that Monster Hunter Rise for Nintendo Switch Switch has shipped 4 million units worldwide. And there's a lot of talk about, okay, is it shipped? Is it sold? I'll tell you now, Capcom got their money. So to them, shipped and sold doesn't matter. And we're seeing it sold out everywhere anyway. So I would just say, okay, 4 million units just outright. Trust me, if you're a store owner right now, you know what I'm talking about when you overorder on something and then you try to return it to a wholesaler, that ship number may as well just be sold, final sale, that's it. But yeah, Monster Hunter Rise off to a massive start here. Monster Hunter World did ship 5 million units in about the same time frame, but that also was put out on 2 different platforms, that being the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4. So this releasing on a single platform like the Switch is still very impressive, and really just have to step back and look at that Monster Hunter franchise and how much it's grown. Monster Hunter World was certainly the big jumping off point for this franchise, really thrusting it into the mainstream as it basically quadrupled the last best-selling Monster Hunter game, and it seems that Rise is going to continue that trajectory. And you know what? I'm looking at this game. This might be one of the first third-party games that at least has a shot at being on like Nintendo's investors page where they go over the best-selling units. If this game gets to like 11 or 12 million units sold, it actually might be up there next to Nintendo's first-party titles. So yes, that's just how strong Monster Hunter Rise is. I still want to see those Famitsu sales charts because I think it's going to be like 1.6 million, at least 1.5 million. That's going to look crazy on that sales chart. But I'm also very curious how many Switch systems sold alongside of this. We're expecting a big-time spike there as well. But wow, Monster Hunter Rise is off and running. Next up, let's talk about Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, specifically on PC, because people noticed something when this game came out. It was on Battle.net, and it is a game that doesn't use online at all, really. It's like all single-player, offline gameplay anyway. But strangely, you need to have an internet connection to play this game because it appears that they did indeed incorporate online DRM check-in. Basically, if you don't have that online connection, you're not playing the game despite it not having an online multiplayer setup or anything. Well, that didn't go over too well with the PC community because as the game released on Friday, it was actually cracked on Saturday. We can head over here. This from Ars Technica saying, by midday Saturday, one day after the game's Battle.net launch, cracking group Empress claimed first dibs on stripping Crash 4's PC version of its online check-in system. Their crack replaces one file on an otherwise vanilla install, and the group's release notes don't clarify what the crack does other than describing the game's defeated DRM as Battle.net plus online only. I mean, at this point, it's a challenge for some of these groups because none of us like online check-in DRM, especially if it's a game that can basically just be played completely offline. Like if you get it on the Switch, for example, you play in handheld mode, you don't need to be connected to a Wi-Fi hotspot or anything there. You can just enjoy the game. So it is frustrating when they not only force you off of Steam and say you got to go to Battle.net, oh, and also you got to be online. So if your internet connection like breaks or Comcast decides to be Comcast one day like they usually are and it's just out for an hour, I guess you're not playing the game. Well, they're not gonna like that, and they're gonna take that as a challenge and they're gonna break that DRM. And it seems to happen all the time. Like even with Denuvo, where they were like, oh, it's unbreakable. Well, that didn't last too long after people started getting the hang of that one. So yeah, you'd be sure that if we keep seeing this from Activision when it comes to their games on PC, you're going to keep seeing groups come in and probably break it the next day. In our last bit of news, let's talk about the UK sales charts. These do show that Monster Hunter Rise was the best-selling game of the week, but it also shows something kind of interesting, that being Super Mario 3D All-Stars Collection spiking heavily in terms of sales, and it's kind of expected because, well, on April 1st, that's it. It won't be there on the eShop, and whatever stock retailers have left that's it. Once they sell through that, no more Mario 3D All-Stars to pick up physically. So let's head over to the charts here, where we can see Monster Hunter Rise at number 1. It was less than Monster Hunter World when that came out, sold physically in 2017, by about 43%. However, as pointed out by Games Industry, this, of course, was on one platform here with the Switch, whereas Monster Hunter World released on 2 different platforms. This was, however, twice the size of Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate on the 3DS. If we go down here to number 2, Super Mario 3D All-Stars jumping up from number 9. Massive, massive jump, over 200% jump in terms of sales up to number 2. Animal Crossing New Horizons at 3, Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury at 4. Minecraft Dungeons, which sold 95%, by the way, in terms of what's being shown here on the Switch. Minecraft on the the Switch, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe at 7, FIFA 21 at 8, Luigi's Mansion 3 at 9, and Super Mario Odyssey at 10. Basically, looking at the top 10 here for the UK, 9 of these were on the Switch. And looking at that stat, that's pretty impressive. The 9 of the top 10 basically being Switch titles and Switch releases, with the other one being FIFA 21, which is always in the top 10 in the UK. But Monster Hunter Rise as number 1 is not surprising. I'll be curious to see how it continues to sell over the next couple of weeks, over the next couple of months. I think this is a game that's gonna continue to run without much issue, especially after what we saw for Monster Hunter World and Mario 3D All-Stars Collection. You know what's gonna be interesting about this one? See how long it can stick around in maybe the top 50 as we find out really just how many copies were left at retail locations. I think it might be in the charts maybe the next 2 weeks, and then that's it. Again, after tomorrow, actually, Mario 3D All-Stars will be no more on the eShop and very scarce to find, I'm sure, in different stores. So once again, make sure you get out there and find one now if you want it. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, would you be more interested in PlayStation Now if they had a large selection of PS1 and PS2 games available? 71% of you said, yes, I would subscribe for a retro section from Sony. 25% of you said, no, I'm not interested in older titles. And 4% of you said, I already have PlayStation Now. I looked through some of the comments and I noticed something. People still think that PlayStation Now is it's only streaming. That's actually not correct. You can download games. Like PS4 games, you can download on your PS5, PS2 games you can download. You only can stream PS3 titles. That's the biggest thing there. And of course, any of these titles you would just stream on your PC if you plug in a PlayStation controller. But you know what? I think that is a good opportunity for Sony if they really want to do something with their legacy software. Maybe they're just not interested in selling these games in the PlayStation Store and all that. I think it'd be cool to add it to PlayStation Now. They already have some PS2 games there, but why not build up an entire section for retro titles, and then you can build up your PlayStation Now subscription user base even further. I mean, that's a big thing we're seeing from these companies, is at least a focus on subscription services, especially on Microsoft's side. So those are titles that I'm sure Sony has kind of just hanging out. Why not put them to some use with PlayStation Now? And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Herman saying, I can't believe you haven't mentioned GameStop trying to sell graphics cards now. And hey, anything GameStop can do to branch out from just video games, I think is a great idea, especially with like their big e-commerce push right now. Why not start dropping video cards in stores or sell them online on the website? There's only one problem. Like, you can't get video cards, like, at all. I remember I had the great idea. I was like, hey, I'm finally gonna grab a big time video card at launch. That 3080 looks awesome, and it's gone, like, immediately. I don't even believe they exist. I think it's just made up. Like, there's no such thing as the 3080, unless someone wants to sell me one at retail, in which case, then I'll believe in it. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today, whether it's all of the Sony PlayStation digital stores being shut down for these legacy systems. Are you sad to see them go, or are you someone rushing right now to buy and download any of the older games? Let me know about that one. And then Monster Hunter Rise and those massive sales numbers, 4 million copies already shipped out. I mean, how far can this thing go? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.